Sean, I know you don't do Magic the Gathering much these days, which is not actually accurate, but I shall continue to read. But what do I think about Oath of the Gatewatch? Well, let me just say, for any of you who maybe aren't familiar, there are 5 colors in Magic. If you're, a former Magic player, you know about the 5 colors and the different mana that exists throughout them and all that good jazz, right? Good stuff, good stuff. We all know what I'm talking about. And in Oath, they introduced a kind of new mana, which is specifically colorless mana. Because the idea of colorless mana exists, of course, it's none of the colors, but there's like specifically colorless is a type now. So there will be, for instance, a creature that requires specifically 1 colorless and 3 of any mana. Really interesting, right? Really interesting, really cool thing. This is a really interesting little set, and I think that it goes to show something that I adore about Magic, which is that it just has a really big design space. It just has this gigantic design space, where there's like all these possibilities. It's a gigantic, gigantic design space. Just so interesting. So much design space, right? It's so cool. And that's the thing that I always love whenever a new Magic set comes out, because I'm like, I have no idea what I'm going to wind up seeing. Keelan says, any tips on how to get into Magic? I play a lot of Hearthstone and Yu-Gi-Oh, but Magic seemed complicated. Just look for pre-releases. Just wait for pre-releases, or if you don't want to wait for a pre-release, just look for a local sealed tournament. Local sealed. How high is the entry barrier for Magic as a Hearthstone player, though? Not high at all. Really not. You have to go in the right order, though. You have to find a place where you can just hang out and play a fun game of Magic. Like, if you just get the free basic decks that they hand out at conventions, they're just like 1 color, 40 cards, just pure fun. Even that is really, really, really fun to play. So, pre-releases is everyone just having a good time. Everyone's just there to have a blast. Everyone's there to have a great time. The step above that are sealed events, like, here's 6 packs, make a deck, we'll be playing in 30 minutes. Those are wonderful, it's really, really fun. Honestly, if you have any friend that plays, just be like, build me a deck, I want to play against you. That's just a good place to start. This is just so fun. Thomas Casey says, please elaborate on what a pre-release event is. I see there's one in my area, but it's sold out. Why are they good for starters? So, a pre-release is that whenever Wizards of the Coast is coming out with a new Magic set, well, actually, so first let me back up, because if you're asking that question, this is an important concept in Magic the Gathering that I gotta say, I'm really surprised is not in Hearthstone. Really, really, really surprised that this is not in Hearthstone. Okay, so here's the thing. Once upon a time, Wizards of the Coast said to themselves, oh my gosh, how do we keep releasing cards all the time? How do we keep releasing cards? Because one risk is if you want people to buy the new cards, you have to keep making them more powerful. Because if you just release cards that are not as interesting or as good as the current set of cards that you have, nobody's going to care at all. So, yeah, Wizards of the Coast, long ago, I'm talking like in the 90s, early 90s, man, when it's like, okay, how do you keep releasing cards and keep people interested? We don't want to make them continue to be more and more and more powerful, because it seems like a weird motivation in terms of design, where you basically just keep throwing away the value of people's old cards. So, this is a little bit tough. What do we do?
I'll show them all.
And so Wizards of the Coast came up with this very smart idea. Which was basically, that's fine, which was that they were going to release new mechanics instead. So it was new interactions in each set of cards. Oh, that's cool, there's sort of a theme. And this is why every set in Magic the Gathering kind of has some new keywords, like Soul Bond or something like that. But There was a new problem that they began to encounter. So I realized, man, we're having a lot of cards. How do we possibly structure? Take one of those. How do we possibly structure this game if there's new cards coming out all the time? So what Wizards of the Coast very, very smartly did. What am I talking about? Yeah, they. How do we keep the complexity down so that way people don't have to keep track of all these cards? So Wizards of the Coast introduced formats, which is basically here is a time period of cards that consists of a format. So, for instance, Standard is effectively all the cards released in the last 2 years. So in Standard, you can only put in cards in the last 2 years. Or Modern is like all the cards in the last 8 or so years. Legacy is like almost all the cards that have ever been released. And so this provided this really cool story for someone who's playing the game, in that there's new mechanics coming out, which means that the gameplay is always changing and evolving, and there's fresh new ideas and experiences coming in. And because this time frame of cards is shifting, old things are leaving as new things are coming in. Which is really cool. And, you know, so now the most popular format is Standard, which is basically the last 2 years. And a pre-release event is whenever Wizards of the Coast is coming out with a new set of cards. They have a little event that is basically you getting just cards from that new set. And everyone just makes a deck and just plays against each other in a fun little mini tournament where the winner just wins a whole bunch of cards. Hey, on W, by the way, any Magic players who know the exact specifics of sets, I'm trying to do something general for the people who don't know what the sets are. But yeah, so it's like really, really cool. And I am really surprised that Hearthstone has not done formats, because formats were not a thing that Wizards of the Coast just said, hey, you know what I think would be cool, you know what would be really sweet? Let's use some formats. It was actually a design problem where they felt restricted in their designs and were having difficulty releasing new cards. And formats were the solution to that design problem that made the release of cards really interesting again. For instance, my favorite format in Magic is Draft, which is basically where you show up without a deck and you get some packs of cards and then you build a deck there. Anytime there's a new set, an entirely new joy to building and constructing sets. It's like really, really cool. Yeah, Sid Fisher said I went to a pre-release last weekend. It was awesome. Yeah, and pre-releases are some of like my favorite gaming memories in Magic. Actually, just in general, but for Magic. Lashrog, there's a really good NPR podcast called Planet Money. They have an episode about how Wizards of the Coast figured out how to keep making Magic cards worth buying. Yeah, I gotta say, in terms of like inspiring design, Wizards of the Coast is like my #1. Like most inspiring design for a game in all of games across all mediums, period. #1 game in terms of the design awesomeness of it. The reason why I say that is because it's been going on for 20 years. There's all these complex constraints. How do you make collectors pleased? Casual players on my... more like kitchen table players who just enjoy the game pleased. How do you please like casual tryhards like me? That's totally me. How do you please tournament players? How do you keep these new sets coming in? How do you manage all these formats? And the way that Wizards of the Coast have done that is just unbelievable. It's so fucking sick how they've been able to do that. And, you know, if you ask me what my favorite game of all time is, it's going to be Brood War, right? It's going to be Brood War. Like, StarCraft Brood War is like my favorite. But StarCraft Brood War is a fixed game that just sits. It just sits there. But in terms of persistent design, the difficulties that Wizards of the Coast have overcome is really incredible. #1. Dr. Darkrat says casual players don't really exist in Magic the Gathering. I like to think of myself as more of a casual tryhard, but I'm totally that guy that's like, I can't believe you shouldn't pick that. You need more creatures. You know, I'm like, I can't. It's like I see it and I'm like, I want to pick the card that I'm going to pick. I think the only reason that I don't play Magic more regularly is exclusively that it's easier to play Hearthstone. Like, that is the one true reason. That is the only reason why I do not play Magic more. So is not a good convenient way for me to do that. Card game's very far away. Card game shop's very far away from me. Yeah, Spivet says Magic the Gathering online has so much more work to do than Hearthstone. Dude, I actually, like, Hearthstone would be so much easier of a game to code than Magic the Gathering. Oh my god, would that be an easier problem? Like 1,000 times easier. Would you recommend any of the MTG video games? Yeah, the Duels of the Planeswalkers, really great.